All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Troy Merritt. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm today's host, along with my problem causer, Brian Gambino. I shouldn't say that, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. Your problem causer.
Yeah,
Hey, everybody. NGPA President Brian Gambino here. I'm here to keep Troy in line.
yeah,
And
yeah,
welcome to our Up in the Air webinar
yeah.
series.
Well, we appreciate everybody joining us today. We've got almost 300 people here with us getting started, and I'm sure more will keep joining us as we get going. A little bit about me. I am the Vice President for NGPA. I've been a member of NGPA for going on 5 years now. I've been a volunteer, and now I work as the Vice President, and I'm really happy that we're able to do stuff like this during COVID. COVID's been kind of a difficult year for everybody, and that includes our organization as well. A little bit about NGPA. Not everybody here may be familiar with us. NGPA is an organization for LGBTQ people in aviation. Our organization actually welcomes everybody to join, whether you are LGBT, an ally, or an aviation enthusiast, or professional, or you just fly planes for a hobby. Our mission is to build, support, and unite the LGBT aviation community worldwide. We are a charitable nonprofit organization, and we have several membership programs ranging from mentorship and aeromedical support to local chapters and university chapters. A big part of our organization is our scholarship program as well. And we give out scholarships every year for flight training and aviation education all around the United States and around the world. If you aren't a member of NGPA, we encourage you to join today. Go to our website, ngpa.org, and click Join Now in the upper right-hand corner and become a member. We ask you to join because it takes resources from our organization to put on these webinars and continue serving our membership and our community during COVID. Like I said, our organization's been impacted along with everybody else during this. We're not able to have in-person events. That's why we're having our webinar series that we have right now, Up in the Air. This is our 4th installment of our Up in the Air series. We're doing this as kind of a replacement for our industry expo that we host every year in Palm Springs, California. We weren't able to do that this year, but we are excited to bring the industry to you in your own homes through the internet. Everybody's become familiar with Zoom. It's become a verb now. And so we're excited to bring that to our members and to the aviation community at large.
I love Zooming with you, Troy. It's been a pleasure Zooming with you.
A lot of Zoom, a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
So that's why we encourage you. If you are not a member, go ahead and go to ngpa.org and join today. Another way you can give back to our organization is by using our text to give program. You can text the 4 letters NGPA to the number 44321. That's 44321, and make a small donation today. Any donation really helps us as we put on these webinars. It costs us a decent amount of money to use a professional version of Zoom and to host our website and to do all the things that we do at NGPA to continue serving our members during COVID. So if you're interested in giving to us today, that number is 44321. Just text NGPA to 44321. The number is in the chat box as well. But let's dive in here a little bit. This is our 4th installment of the Up in the Air webinar series. We're excited to bring information about the industry to our members. We're doing this because, as most people are aware, the aviation industry has really been turned upside down by COVID. Between less than half of what people were flying in 2019 flying, airlines all around the world either shutting down or coming to a stop. Lots of crazy things have been happening over the last 12 months in the aviation industry, and we're all anxious to see what is going to happen as we go forward. And so we're bringing some of our partners in the aviation world, our companies who have been partners of NGPA are joining us to talk about what their plans are, how they're handling the impact of COVID in their world and in their aviation community. So today we're going to be talking to Cape Air. A little bit about Cape Air. Cape Air first started flying in 1989 between the city of Boston and a city very important to NGPA, Provincetown, Massachusetts. Massachusetts. I don't know. I have a hard time saying that word. Provincetown, Massachusetts. And since then, they've expanded their service from the Northeast in New England to the Caribbean, Montana, and Midwest states. They operate a fleet of nearly 100 aircraft, including a really cool airplane that I think if you've been following aviation, you've seen recently, the Tecnam P-2012. And they carry over 500,000 passengers every year. It's possible you may never heard of Cape Air, but they're a pretty significant airline in the United States, and they have been around for quite a while, almost as long as NGPA, a little over 30 years.
And it's super important to NGPA, Troy, with Cape Air, because interestingly enough, they were the very first presenting company at our industry expo when we hosted it in Provincetown back in 2014. So before we had anything out in Palm Springs with the 62 companies, 300 exhibitors, Cape Air was the first to partner with NGPA for our very first industry event in Provincetown back in 2014. So it's extra special, our relationship with Cape Air.
That's really cool. I love that. So I was doing a little bit of reading about Cape Air, and I came across their motto, and I think their motto is probably one of the best in the industry. And I'm sorry, Brian, I know you work at JetBlue and probably think everything there is the best, but I happen to think Cape Air's motto is one of the best I've come across in the industry. Their motto is make our customers happy and have a good time doing it. I think that's really important. When I was a flight instructor, I used to tell my students I had 3 rules. I said, 1, the first rule is we're always going to have a safe flight when we go up in the airplane. 2, we're going to learn something, even if it's the most rudimentary thing we do. And 3, we're going to have fun doing it. And I think everybody in aviation gets into it because we love what we do. We think it's a fun way to have a job, and to make that part of your company's motto, I think is really awesome. So we're going to bring in our group from Cape Air that are going to talk with us today. We're going to have Cameron Withrow, Ruby Laughter, and Treston McKay. You guys, whenever you're ready, you can join here with your cameras and microphones. We're going to go and get started here. Ruby, am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes,
Laughter.
that is correct.
Cool. So I'm going to introduce you guys. We're going to hand it off to you here shortly. So Cameron Withrow, member of NGPA for a couple of years now, joined in 2019. I first met Cameron at one of our NGPA events. He is the Director of Industry Relations and Sourcing. Did I get that right? Pilot sourcing or sourcing? Yeah. He lives in Boston and has been with Cape Air for 4 years now. And he manages a lot of the pilot recruiting and industry relations for Cape Air. Ruby Laughter is the Assistant Chief Pilot for the Caribbean region, has worked at Cape Air for 5 years now. And she lives in St. Thomas, flying the Cessna 402. She's been a member of NGPA since 2017. Treston McKay.
Stop rubbing the St. Thomas portion in.
Yeah,
rubbing that in.
A lot about that. Ruby was outside on her porch showing us the Caribbean a few minutes ago when we were getting ready for this webinar. So we're all just a little jealous.
We told her to get back inside because it's not fair to show that off during the winter.
Treston, the third person here on our panel, is the first officer for Cape Air. He's based in Billings, Montana. He lives in Billings as well. And he has been at Cape Air for 7 months. He's actually in Hyannis right now, going through upgrade training to be a captain for Cape Air. And he joined NGPA in 2019. Treston is also NGPA scholarship recipient. He received the American Airlines Advanced Training Scholarship in 2019. I'm going to hand this off to you guys real quick. We are going to take questions. We kind of have like a 2-part series here for our webinar. First, we're going to hear from our panel of Cape Air people, and we're having a conversation with them. Then we're going to shift to the second half of the webinar where we're going to take questions. We have a handful of questions already sent in. If you have some questions, you can drop them into the chat box. We're going to try and keep up with those. Sometimes it's hard to find all the questions and keep up with them there. We're also going to take live questions at the end where we can hear from you using the raise hand function of Zoom. So when we get to that portion, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but we will be able to get to some of your specific questions here. So I'll hand this off to Cameron to start. Cameron, how are you?
I'm great, Troy. Thanks so much to you, Brian, and everyone behind the scenes, at NGPA. I know you guys have worked hard to put this series together, and I've personally looked forward to it every Wednesday for the past month and a half or so now. Ending the workday in the middle of the week, and really hearing from the rest of the industry and hearing the optimism with the recovery of the industry and what's to come in the future. So it's been great. Thank you so much for having us. We're so proud to be here. As Troy said, my name is Cameron Withrow. I'm the Director of Pilot Industry Relations and Sourcing at Cape Air. I've been here for about 4 years now. You know, to be totally honest, I always like to share my story. I didn't know much about Cape Air coming out of college. You know, I had a shift, you know, a couple months after graduating college to figure out exactly where I wanted to end up. And I stumbled on a job posting at Cape Air, and that was for our SOC department, and as a crew scheduler. And, you know, so I flew up from Georgia. I'm born and raised from Northwest Georgia, and didn't know anyone up here in this area, but did a bit of research, flew up for an interview, met members of the leadership team, and, you know, really fell in love and felt like I could make some really solid connections in the industry at Cape Air. Had plans to be here for about a year or so, and here I am now 4 years in. And, you know, talking to many of my coworkers, our chief pilot, just about everyone, similar stories. You know, people have plans to come here as sort of a stepping stone, but Cape Air has really become the family for me personally. And, you know, I've enjoyed the ride. I've seen time and time again, you know, the leadership team invests in the employee group, and, you know, they've really helped me get into the position I'm in today. And, you know, it's been a great ride. So I'll turn it over to the real stars of the show, to Ruby and Treston, our pilots here. And Ruby's our assistant chief pilot in the Caribbean and has been with us for a little while now. So Ruby, you want to share your introduction?
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name's Ruby. I'm the assistant chief pilot for the Caribbean region for Cape Air. So I'm the boss lady down here. It's a great company, loads of fun. I get to live in the Caribbean. Come on. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. No snow. It's always nice. It's a great company. I've been here 5 years. It's kind of like Cameron. I just expected to get here, do my time, complete my contract, and then move on to bigger airplanes, shinier airplanes. And it turns out I really like Cape Air. I'm comfortable here. It's a good company. It's kind of like a family. So I'm a lifer now. They're stuck with me.
No, I've heard that. I'll add to that. I've gotten to know a few people from school who went to Cape Air and ended up staying there for a very long time. I know a few people who I've worked with who left Cape Air and miss it, and said that leaving Cape Air was one of the hardest things they did in their career. So you guys must have just like a fantastic work culture to have people say that about your company. I think it's kind of rare and unique in the aviation industry.
It's a nifty company. I like it.
That's good. That's good. And you get to live in places like St. Thomas. I mean,
exactly.
I look at other aviation bases around the United States, around the world, and there's very, very rarely places you can live that are in the Caribbean like that. Treston, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Unmuted. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, just got to make sure. I don't want to be that guy this time. No, I started flight training in Southern Utah. I instructed down there for about 2 years. I first heard about Cape Air when Cameron actually came out to Southern Utah University and actually did a back when the world was before COVID. Who actually talked about, you know, the industry and everything, and how Cape Air kind of was a very progressive company, as well as what really kind of drew me towards Cape Air was the fact that they're twin pistons. You know, it requires a huge workload to really workload management skills and development skills to get to a captain at Cape Air, and so that was kind of the kind of career progression I was looking for, to build the skills of flying a twin piston less than 18,000 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I remember friends who went to Cape Air and talked about the rigor of the training program there. What was training like at NGPA? What was training like here? What was training like at Cape Air when you first went there? You got hired, what, 7 months ago, you said?
Yeah, I got hired July 20th of 2020. So right in the middle of COVID when they ran the class. And the training we'll talk a little bit more about in the slides, but very, very rigorous. It's definitely a training program that comes with some bragging points, to say the least. So far I absolutely love Cape Air. It's been pretty good to me. Not too much to nothing bad to say at all. So it's a great place. I definitely enjoyed the people here. Are fantastic. You know, one thing that really kind of shines with Cape Air is you're not an employee number. You know, is you are Treston, you are Cameron, you are Ruby. You know, it's more or less a first name basis. And so it's a pretty family sized company. It's that happy medium between it's a happy medium between a small 135 and a large charter company or a 121 type style flying.
Do you know how many pilots are on the list at Cape Air?
Off the top of my head, I think the last time I looked at the seniority list was yesterday. But 114 bidding captains right now is the last time.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, like, that's the kind of company where you can eventually you'll get to know just about everybody who you fly with at Cape Air, and especially in your base, right? I'm sure the bases are probably each about a quarter of the pilot group. Do you know offhand, Ruby, how big the bases are?
I would obviously, the Northeast Boston area is going to be our largest number of pilots. I think here in my region, I've got about 50 pilots here in the Caribbean. No, it can't be that much. I apologize. If we only have 100 active, then maybe 30 here. So
correct me if I'm wrong. Pilots can seasonally move around depending on, because you guys have your demand shifts pretty seasonally from the Northeast to Caribbean and pretty much warmer places, right?
Correct. Our busy season in the summer is in New England. And then of course, for the winter, we pick up here under normal, typical circumstances. That is the ebb and flow. Our season here in the Caribbean is in the winter time. So a lot of the pilots shift down here for the winter. I live here year round and fly here year round.
Awesome.
But a lot of people flex back and forth. Awesome.
Well, guys, we're going to learn a little bit more. Cameron, I think you have a presentation to share with us here. I'll let you jump into that whenever you're ready. Excited to learn some more details about Cape Air and some of the specifics.
All right, so we sort of started to get an overview already, which is great. I wanted to start with a quick introduction of our leadership team here at Cape Air. We've got Dan Wolf and Linda Markham, kind of our fearless leaders, if you will. Dan Wolf is our founder and CEO. Dan lives down on Cape Cod in Chatham. And, he founded Cape Air in 1989 and with, a couple of airplanes and a single route from Boston to Provincetown. And Troy, I also struggle, I guess maybe it's a Georgia thing, struggle pronouncing Massachusetts. I said it just like you did. But founded Cape Air in 1989. At its largest point, grew the organization to over 1,200 employees. That was back in our time. We flew out in Micronesia and had a 121 certificate for many years, flying ATRs under United Express into Guam, Rota, and Saipan. So at our largest point, over 1,200 employees. Currently today, I think we're around 800 or so total. And, Cape Air came into the COVID world pretty strong financially and has thankfully been able to avoid any furloughs or layoffs and keep our family intact, really. Our executive team did a great job at, making cuts where they could to stretch out the CARES funding as long as possible, beyond what the 6-month mark was supposed to be. So they did a great job with all of that. Dan has a background as an A&P mechanic, as a flight instructor. I believe Dan has over 8,000 hours as a flight instructor, and of course as a captain at Cape Air. Dan, he's very active at all levels of the organization. You can still find him in Saturday mornings, flying the first half of the day from Boston to Provincetown as a captain. So I think that's an amazing thing to see in a CEO at an airline this size. Dan is also very engaged in the community that he lives in and the communities that we serve. Dan served 3 terms as a state senator for the state of Massachusetts and serves on many boards throughout the Cape Cod community. And then I'm not sure what's presenting on my side, but Linda Markham is our president. She's my boss. She's really amazing to work with, and she is very, pilot sourcing is, as high on the priority list as anything else. She's been, for many years, has been very engaged with our recruitment initiatives. Linda currently serves as chairwoman of the board for Women in Aviation and has worked with that organization, very passionate about it for many years. She's also served as chair for the Regional Airline Association and still continues to be an active participant of that board. Linda, much like Dan, very engaged in the communities that she lives in. She this summer was appointed chairwoman of the board for Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce and served on Governor Charlie Baker of Massachusetts' task force for reopening the state after COVID. So, they both, from a very high level, inspire everyone in the organization. We have a program in place that incentivizes and will pay employees for them volunteering their time in communities. So really great team that they've got, or that we have here at Cape Air. And as Troy was touching on, Mocha Hagati, it's amazing to see the reach that phrase has had. You go into different places and you say Cape Air and they know Mocha Hagati. And, that's what we show up to work and live by to do, is make our customers happy and have a great time doing it. And, all of that's with safety first, integrity, passion, and a lot of fun. Our core values are kindness, teamwork, and respect. We talk a lot about that during the interview process. As I was saying, the commitment to our communities. Ruby, I'm not sure, you've been around longer than I have. Do you have anything else to add about the culture of Cape Air?
Well, like Treston said, it really is a family situation here. You're not a number, you're a person. It's fabulous that when I am in headquarters in Hyannis, I walk down the hall and Linda and Dan know who I am. They don't just see another line captain. They know me. They know about my family, what's going on in my life. And I appreciate that. You're a person and you're valued here.
I have a question for you about culture, Cameron. This goes to anybody who wants to answer it. But one of the things we focus on at NGPA, and we're also kind of doing this in partnerships with our sister organizations. It's not quite accurate. We're welcoming our sister organizations, OBAP and Women in Aviation, to this. We had it on our front screen, but it brings to the mind and question about diversity at Cape Air. What are your cultural values around diversity in Cape Air?
Cape Air has a committee that's focused on workplace excellence. That's sort of the driving force behind that. And that's made up of, I think it's 14 different leaders of different departments within the company, spread all throughout, the organization and the different regions that we serve. And that committee is made up of 5 pillars. One is employee recognition, which is the pillar that I'm a chair of. And we have communication, operational excellence, and professional development. We focus a lot on professional development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so at a very high level, that's something we focus on, and the exec team is very engaged in. And I'm proud to say, you brought up Women in Aviation. Since December, we've hired about 45 pilots, and almost 25% of those pilots have been female. I looked up the statistics from 2019. Something like 4.5% of ATP certified pilots in the U.S. are female. And here at Cape Air, I think with our current pilot group, that's about 11%, which is incredibly low. But
it has to be one of the best in the industry. The airline I work for always brags saying that we have 7% or something like that. That's supposed to be really high. And so 11% is fantastic. It's nowhere near what it should be, but that's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. So we focus on it. It's focused on at a very high level. And, that's, some of the silver linings, and this is something I was going to get into a little later, we're always looking for the silver linings in COVID. And one of those is the ability for, my team to really focus in, while we're not, for the past few months, prior to December, we're actively recruiting and traveling out to events. So we really had some time to talk with industry partners, universities, and come up with some innovative ideas to solve those issues. So hopefully in the next coming weeks, we'll have some programs to announce around that.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Let's see here. Had to throw this in here. Very, very proud of it. 2020 Cape Air was best airline in the Gay Travel Awards. You know, that we had some big competitors with some major airlines in that category. And you know, Troy, I think just as we were talking about this, Cape Air embraces that diversity. And you know, myself, born and raised in Georgia, making the move up here, as I said, become the family up here. And I felt like that from day one. So I think this is a very cool award, and proud of that.
Awesome.
And then a little more about Cape Air. We've kind of talked about all this stuff. But headquartered in Hyannis, Massachusetts, about an hour and a half south of Boston. So I make that drive a couple of times a month. Work from home has been great for me. I don't have to make that drive every day, but I do miss being in the office, of course. We, as I said, started in 1989 and first route Boston Provincetown, a route that we still serve today. So basically, I'm not sure if everyone probably here on this call is familiar with the geography of Cape Cod and where Provincetown is located. As you know, during the summer, that can be a 3, sometimes probably 4-hour drive. And it's a pretty rural community up on the very tip of Cape Cod. But it's a 15-minute flight across the water in a Cessna 402 to Boston, Mass. And so that is, you know, connecting that small community to the larger aviation network. That is really how Cape Air has expanded. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the Essential Air Service program, but that's how Cape Air has expanded, is, you know, connecting those small communities. The Department of Transportation identifies those communities. Airlines come in and bid to those, submit a bid and proposal to those communities, and then those communities vote and decide on which airline best meets their needs, their travel needs. So that's a large portion of what we do, and I'll break it down some of that when we get into our route map, which is next. Starting with the Northeast, there was one more thing. There we go. I think we've got about 16 cities in the Northeast, and please, Treston or Ruby, if you have anything to say here, chime in. But everything you see south of Boston is part of our legacy market. You know, that's where Cape Air started, is, you know, Cape and Islands flying, and you know, just over the last 2 years, added service into JFK. So as you can imagine, you know, flying a Cessna 402 into some really challenging airspace and challenging weather conditions, and trying to keep up with the big guys. Everything you see north of Boston is part of the Essential Air Service program. So a significant portion of our operation. Happy to say that Bar Harbor, Maine, a city that we have served for a number of years now, we previously, up until last year, had that service, the subsidized service for Bar Harbor on a seasonal, the off season, and then another airline had that for the busy season during the summer months. Cape Air was awarded the year-round service contract by the DOT and the community of Bar Harbor to serve them year-round. So that's going from a 2-captain base to an 8-captain base. So that's some significant growth, and it's also a 4-year contract. So some sustainability for Cape Air. Last thing I'll kind of say about the Northeast is, and this applies to our Midwest region and Caribbean region, just about every city you see on that screen is a pilot base. We base our pilots, and the way our operation works is an early morning flight from the small community into the larger city, connecting them to the aviation network. Many of these people you fly are, you know, people going in to see a doctor in the city, and maybe just making a day trip. So you really get to know the people in the community because you live there as well. That's kind of what I've got on the Northeast. Ruby, Treston, do you have anything else? Great. Go ahead and jump into the Midwest. We've been in the Midwest region. Some people may not realize, you know, right off that Cape Air operates all the way in that area. That's our route map. We added Manistee, Michigan in October. So in the middle of the pandemic, we picked up a city, the first city in Michigan that Cape Air has served. And we're very excited about the service. It's also has a seasonality to it. There's some tourism parts during, you know, the better time of year in regards to weather. So that goes up, I think, during the summer to a 4 captain base as opposed to 2 during the off season. So again, some great experience flying a 402 and a Tecnam into Chicago O'Hare, St. Louis, and Nashville. The Midwest is the first city that we fully integrated the Tecnam fleet. So I think we have 12 or 13 Tecnams out there that is operating that service. We still have about 8 402s based out there to sort of support that operation in the event that we need that. So, but I know Treston has spent some time out in, I think it was Quincy. Is that right, Treston?
Yeah, it was in Quincy. Yep, flying the Quincy to Chicago route, Chicago to Quincy, Quincy to Chicago, Chicago to Quincy, and then Quincy to St. Louis, and then St. Louis back to Quincy.
Yeah. How was that taking a Tecnam or a 402 into Chicago O'Hare?
170 to the outer marker. We just it's a borderline full throttle. Just get it there so we can keep all the if there's any jet guys listening, you know, keep the flow going. No, it's completely doable. It's not too much of a challenge. The biggest challenge, I would say, with flying again a twin piston into class Bravo like that is the pace at which things happen. Everything happens a lot faster. And so, again, going back to the experience side of things, it's the experience that you gain with that kind of workload is just incredible.
Cool. I think we're probably going a little over time, so we'll kind of pick it up.
I'll jump in real quick, Cameron. How much more of your presentation do you have, just out of curiosity?
There's about 6 slides, and the last part is related to our gateway programs, which I know most people are most interested in.
Sure. No, I'll let you keep going. I was just kind of keeping time myself. So
sure. And Montana, which again is currently where Treston is based. Treston, you want to talk about the schedule and basing out there in Montana? It's a little different than the other regions.
Yeah, absolutely. So where Montana shines a little bit differently, you still have your 4-on 3-off schedule with any base that you get. The biggest difference with Billings is it's centralized basing. Whereas you would typically in like the Midwest or on the Northeast, you would have, you know, your base would be Bar Harbor, you would live and you would fly out of Bar Harbor. Montana, on the other hand, is more of your kind of like your airline pilot mentality, where it's like, oh, you're going to go do overnights, you're going to go on trips type things. So a typical day would be you'd wake up in Billings, you'd start your rotation, you'd fly Billings to Glasgow, Glasgow to Billings, Billings to Sydney, Sydney to Billings, Billings to Glendive. And then because you'd be out of duty day at that time, you'd go ahead and overnight. You'd get per diem that night. You would also get company accommodations in the hotel there as well, along with a company car for the night. And then you'd go on to the next day. You'd maybe do Glendive, Billings, Glasgow, Glasgow to Billings, Billings to Havre, overnight in Havre. And then you continue that rotation all the way until your 4th day on. And then your 4th day on, you'd be overnighting in Billings, your base, and then you're off for 3 days.
Great. Yeah, it's a great group out there in Billings. They're pretty tight knit out there, and a lot of the younger generation like that for commuting options, because you know they can get by without fully having a residence in Billings. The Caribbean, where Ruby is, I'll let you say a few things about the Caribbean, Ruby.
Well, we do not stay in hotels here. We start in our day at our home bases, which is part of what I really appreciate about Cape Air. I like to go home every night. A typical day, because the islands are also close here, prior to COVID, a typical day usually was 10 flights, so 5 round trips to somewhere. Because we have reduced our flight schedule somewhat due to the circumstances, I'm doing between 6 and 8 flights a day. And our longest flight at the moment is from San Juan to Tortola. It's 40 minutes. We were operating San Juan to Nevis. That's about a little bit over an hour. But most of our flights are 20 or 30 minutes. And we just kind of bang around like ping pong balls here and just bounce between the islands. And you get to see a lot of tourists come in, but you also see a lot of the local people. We have regulars that are traveling to San Juan for medical appointments or things like that. And you get to know everybody. I mean, I go to the grocery store and people always say, hey, Cap, you know.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Cool. Yeah, the Caribbean was really rebounding after the hurricanes. We got down there quickly and did some recovery missions. That was a few years ago now. And I think it was January 2020. We carried more passengers that month than we had in any previous year. So it was really rebounding before COVID sort of took a hit to that, I guess. Getting into our fleet, the Cessna 402 has been sort of the backbone of the fleet. I think we currently have 80 of those in the operation right now. We've parked a few, donated a few airframes to partner universities for their A&P programs, but very great airplane, still very airworthy, well-maintained. We will likely continue to be in the operation for the next several years. It's going to be some time. The goal is to phase it out completely with the Tecnam P2012 Traveler, which is next on the screen. Yeah, over the years, maybe we will reconfigure a few for some more comfortable seating. And maybe, this year we've done more charters than we ever have. So maybe place a few of those airplanes into some markets where we don't fly them at the frequency that we currently do. So they're still going to be around for a little while. And then the Brit Norman Islander, not the sexiest plane on the screen or out there, but it's a fun airplane to fly. It's slow. You get some really great experience taking it into some challenging airports down in Culebra, Virgin Gorda. So some pretty cool experience there. And then the Tecnam P2012 Traveler, which Treston is qualified on. So I'll let Treston speak to that. But just real briefly, we Cape Air worked with different manufacturers to develop, what Cape Air needed to replace the 402. We worked with Tecnam for over 10 years before we took delivery of the first one in 2019. But fixed gear, next gen avionics with the G1000, high wing, Lycoming engines. It's got USB charging ports at each seat and Italian leather. So pretty cool looking airplane. We have 20 of them now. Again, the Midwest is fully operational with that. By end of May, we hope to have Montana integrated and fully operational with that fleet. So we hope to have 30 by the end of this year. We have options for a total of, I think, 115, something like that, maybe off a couple of numbers. But Treston, how was your experience going through training on the Tecnam?
It's different. It is a little bit different of an airplane. It is at its core a multi-engine twin piston. When in all reality, you start looking at it, you start getting the maneuvers down, the stalls and all the characteristics like that. There's just a few little things, little quirks that the airplane does as far as slowing down. It slows down very fast, but it does cruise about 155 knots true. Sometimes on the 150 side, a little bit slower than the 402, but it is a much more comfortable airplane, especially from a pilot's situational awareness standpoint. Look down at that bottom right screen there. You have three beautiful screens. The G1000 NXI system, incredible, and extremely intuitive. In addition to that, you also have a GFC 700 autopilot. In my opinion, one of the best autopilots in the world. Just an absolutely incredible Garmin avionics setup. The avionics, they're still ironing out a few things, as with any new aircraft. The Cape Airs were, again, like Cameron was saying, working diligently with Tecnam to get modifications out to get the aircraft to become even more operationally compatible. Just from, I believe, from the first Tecnam that we've received to the Tecnam we have now, there's been over 80 modifications on that aircraft, just to smooth out and streamline the from an operational standpoint.
We had a question in the chat box. I'm curious, did you have to learn to fly it on a simulator, or do you go right into the airplane and start learning how to fly?
Another awesome thing about Cape Air is airplane. So it's so the Cape Air doesn't have the FSTD yet for it, and so all the flight training events are held into the aircraft. They do have a G1000 trainer. It's strictly just the three screens put together where you can work with the MFD, the PFDs, get the programming out of the way, so you're able to kind of streamline into the airplane. Because as you know, in the 402 we have a 430, and that's the little screen about this big. So now we have these gigantic screens that now we got to learn how to essentially learn the logic of that aircraft. Yes, to answer, so the long-winded way of answering your question is yes, airplane, airplane, airplane. That's what I love about Cape Air.
And just looking ahead, Cape Air is very forward-thinking in many things that we do. If you've done any research, we have a whole department, which is amazing for an airline the size that we are, focused on sustainability. We operate out of 3 buildings out of Hyannis. 2 of those we own, 1 we lease space out of. So the 2 that we own have solar panels all over the tops of the buildings, the roofs, and so we produce the energy that we consume. And we have every intention over the next 5-6 years, however long it takes, to become the world's first commuter airline operating a fully all-electric fleet. And I actually had the privilege to travel out. I was in out at Embry-Riddle Prescott at the same time that Dan and our executive team was out there visiting Aviation's US-based headquarters. So they invited me to come out to the airport there, and I got chills walking in there and seeing that airplane. It was pretty amazing to see, what the next what the future is. I know Dan is working very closely with Aviation, like we did with Tecnam, to develop that airplane. So pretty cool. Troy, are we still good? I kind of want to save the gateway questions maybe in for the Q&A, and I think people naturally have questions about that.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what we're getting a lot of questions are. So if you don't mind, we could just dive right into talking about some of these things here. I've got some questions I've been writing down. Everybody's listening and adding your questions to the chat box. I've been trying to keep track of these and adding down. I'm going to ask our team here from Cape Air about, ask them your questions. A lot of the same questions. A few of the questions we're getting is, what are your schedules like? Tristan, you mentioned a 4-on, 3-off schedule. What is typical schedule like?
So the standard schedule per the CBA is a 4-on, 3-off schedule. That's what we are guaranteed to get throughout our course at Cape Air. The only caveat to that is going to be, do you want to pick up time, and is there time to pick up? Mm-hmm. There's also the training side of things. From a training schedule side of things, the CBA does dictate that you are taken off of a line holding base, and so you are put onto a training schedule, which is more or less they work you 5 days, typically 2 days off. They definitely try and work with you to make sure they get the appropriate amount of rest between. So
how does your pay work then in that case? Are you paid by the hour of block time that you spend in the airplane? Or are you paid for showing up to work that day?
Not quite. It's actually pretty unique. It's actually very similar to salary. So essentially, the way it's kind of streamlined, and to make it simple, is we have a 40-hour guarantee. So no matter what happens, if a flight gets canceled, if we have to call in fatigued, if we have to, the plane goes down, the typical day-to-day line operations, we are guaranteed a line minimum. So for instance, I am a guaranteed line holder, which is Billings Line 7. I am guaranteed 42.32 hours per week at Cape Air, bottom line. As long as I show up to work, and then if something out of my control, say fatigue, airplane breaks, the weather moves in, I can still go home. Say, for instance, I'm scheduled from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and say I go home at noon, right? I still get paid for the whole time. There is no, it's a kind of what's that? Pay protected is another way of saying it. It's all, the pay protection is 42.32 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way the pay works. And then if you request time off, on the other hand, if you have like some PTO, then of course, then that doesn't apply because now you're requesting the time off. Sure. But as far as pay protection goes, it's closer to a salary type thing, but more of it's a line guarantee.
Yeah. So a question that's come up a couple of times I see in the chat box here. Do you have to sign a contract to get employment with JetBlue? Are you contracted for a certain amount of time when you get hired?
Yes. So the entire time a pilot spends, if you're hired as a first officer at Cape Air, the entire time you spend in the right seat is an investment on Cape Air's part, and it's a worthwhile investment for both parties. It's the experience you get in the operation makes the upgrade from first officer to PIC, and then from PIC to captain pretty seamless. That's it's really our best way to create the next captain for Cape. That's our pipeline, really. And you know, you really don't generate revenue at Cape Air until you upgrade to captain with a fully unrestricted ATP. We require fully unrestricted. The restricted ATP doesn't really do anything for Cape Air's operation. So that's that's when your commitment begins at Cape Air, and it's on a scale, 12 to 18 months, depending on what you come on with. If you come to Cape Air with a fully unrestricted ATP, it's a 6-month commitment. But yeah, it's a significant investment that Cape Air makes because you don't generate revenue until you fly as a captain. So from the day you pass your ATP check ride, that's when your commitment begins at Cape Air.
Sure. So let's talk about. I had another question here, but I'm going to shift here into this. Let's talk about what it takes to initially get hired. So what's the minimum it takes to get hired as a first officer at Cape Air? I see you got this posted here. So you get your first officer requirements. What's the minimum here?
Yeah, so our minimums are still 500 hours total time, commercial, multi, and instrument certificates. We do prefer 1,000+ hours right now. We're starting to see some attrition with airlines and mostly charter operators, hiring. And so seeing some attrition in our captain group. And now with the announcement, Spirit Airlines, one of our great partners in Gateway programs, is hiring. We have a significant, 15 pilots or so that we expect to probably transition directly to Spirit this year. So we need to hire pilots with higher total time so that they can upgrade a little quicker. If you come on at 500 hours, you're going to spend a little over a year as an FO. Again, as soon as you hit the unrestricted ATP mins, you'll upgrade to captain. So we need some pilots that are going to upgrade pretty quickly. So most of the pilots we're hiring right now are CFI, CFII, MEI experience with 1,000, 1,200 hours. And some recently have had ATP mins, just don't have the CTP complete.
Sure. So that brings up kind of the second question. A lot of folks are asking how, or I should say, is it possible to be hired directly as a captain? What does it take?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And please give me a call, pilotjobs@capeair.com. And we love to talk to pilots that have their ATPs, and absolutely.
Awesome. So you were going to talk about your pathway programs. What do you call them at Cape Air?
They all vary. They're all gateway programs is sort of the term that we've used. Sure. So Cape Air gateway programs. I kind of had this screen as a placeholder, wanted to talk about sort of our seniority list a little bit before getting into the gateway programs. When we talk about our seniority list, we always break it down into thirds. We have a third of our pilots here at Cape Air, and it varies a little bit, but a third of our pilots that are here for a defined amount of time, whether it's the commitment that they sign on to. We understand that we're a stepping stone. We want pilots to come to Cape Air, really enjoy the time and experience they get here as a pilot, and take that experience with them through their careers at their destination airline that they want to end up at. And my job is to help them get there to that goal airline that they want to work for. But that first third, they're here for a time that we know, a defined amount of time, and that gives us great predictability in our attrition. And then the second third is pilots that maybe spend 3 to 4 years as a captain. They still have that long-term goal to fly a jet, bigger equipment, but they really enjoy what they're doing. They enjoy the quality of life and the money. They make a decent living at Cape Air, so maybe they stay around a little bit longer. And then the final third of that are pilots that have been with Cape Air for 15 to 20 years and have made their homes in the communities that we serve. But so that's sort of the breakdown of that.
Yeah, I'll let you guys in a little secret. I know folks at Cape Air who have cleared $100,000 a year flying for Cape Air. So there's maybe a myth that you're flying a small airplane and not making a lot of money. And it's possible, everybody who's new at an airline is not going to make very much money. That's just kind of the way it is, regardless of where you work. But you can make a good living flying for Cape Air. I know that to be bad. So you have gateway programs. I did not know you had a gateway program with Spirit. I did know you had a gateway program with JetBlue, and that's been around for a long time. So who are your airline partners that you have gateway programs with?
Yeah, I saw Ruby turned her screen on. I know she had some.
Oh, you want to talk about making money, Ruby?
Yeah. I was going to chime in that I regularly clear 6 figures.
Good. That's awesome. And that's the way it should be.
I didn't quite make it in 2020 because of COVID, but it was still pretty close.
Right. Awesome.
Worth their tail off to do it. They fly a lot, but it is absolutely achievable. Yeah, so you asked about the gateway partners, and if we don't get through all these, capeairpilots.com breaks down each of these partnerships. But Horizon was on last week, correct? I think they were on last week, maybe prior.
Horizon.
But yeah, Horizon Air, we were just getting this off the ground, working with Carlos Zendejas and Deja Hubbard there. Similar cultures between the companies, and they have sort of that family feel as well, as they talked about. But really, to qualify for that program, you got to successfully upgrade to captain, and then at that point they'll complete a virtual interview with you. If you're accepted into that, then once you've fulfilled your commitment at Cape Air as a captain, you can transition directly to Horizon. And then I think my understanding is, after going through your first recurrent at Horizon, you can qualify for the transition, at least to apply for the transition to Alaska.
So what would you say is like number of months or years you're looking at in this program?
So say you come on at 500 hours total time, you're probably going to spend about 3 years in total at Cape Air.
Before you can go to Horizon.
Before you could go to Horizon. If you come as a direct entry captain, and this is all assuming Horizon is hiring at the time, of course. But if you come in as a direct entry captain, you complete your 6 months as a captain at Cape Air. Once you've completed your initial training as a captain at Cape Air and you're on the line, you could apply for this program, do your interview, and know that you could, possibly have a Class 8 in 6 months from then. Yeah. Spirit Airlines, did you have a question, Troy?
No, I was going to say, so what other airlines do you have? I'm curious about your Spirit partnership. When did this start? This seems new to me.
So this started, I think we got it off the ground in 2019, early 2019.
Okay, so it's fairly new.
It is, and we in 2019 transitioned 10 pilots to Spirit, and they were all successful. And I think that's a big highlight to the success of that. The Spirit came up to our headquarters. They've been a fantastic partner, even throughout COVID. Of course, all of our pilots were emailing saying, Spirit's not hiring, are they still committed to this program? So who better to hear it from than Spirit themselves? They put together a town hall visit with our pilot group, and their talent acquisition team came together and presented to our pilots, and just talked about the commitment that they have to and the desire to have more Cape Air pilots at Spirit Airlines. So they came up, looked at our training department, see the experience that our pilots get, and basically, to qualify for this program, you apply a year after you've been a captain at Cape Air. They want to see you get through a recurrent check ride, and you have to request a letter of recommendation from our chief pilot's office. That is sort of the seal of approval, saying we think this is going to be a great pilot for Spirit one day. And we're selective in issuing those letters. It's not just because you're a captain at Cape Air, by no means guarantees you're going to get into this program. But we have about 15 pilots that meet all of their requirements. They've been captains for Cape Air for 2 years now and have their appropriate letters of recommendation. And so they'll be getting interviews very soon.
Are there any other prerequisites? Maybe I missed this. Like, do you have to have completed a university course, or you just have to be employed with Cape Air to join this program? Yeah,
it's pretty straightforward. And that's why we're pretty selective in that process for identifying pilots to qualify for.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this program, is that it is a very straightforward and clear path to Spirit.
Do you still have your gateway program with JetBlue? You do, great.
Sir, and so we do. JetBlue's been an amazing partner. This was Cape Air and JetBlue sort of pioneered the university gateway 14 years ago. We were the first ones at that level to do that. And we've sent over the years over 100 pilots from Cape Air directly to JetBlue. There's a lot of work that goes into that program on both sides. JetBlue, you get assigned, once you're accepted into that program at the university level, you're assigned a mentor, a captain at JetBlue, and they spend a lot of time developing these pilots at the university stage before you come to Cape Air. But there's now multiple paths you can choose in this program from university. Cape Air is still one of those paths as the time building phase. So once you've instructed for a year at your university, you can qualify for transition, usually at about 750 hours total time to Cape Air. And then you'll fly for a year as a captain. There's a jet transition course that JetBlue has developed to make that transition from a 402 to an Airbus a little easier. You go down and fly in the sim with them for a few days before you transition. And that's another opportunity for them to mentor and develop you. There's various checkpoints where we do evaluations of you. But every single pilot that has come to Cape Air through this program and transitioned to JetBlue was successful in training.
That's awesome.
So I think that's
awesome. So this differing from some of your other programs seems like it has a lot more prerequisites. So you have
exactly.
to come out of a university program with your 3.0 GPA, and you have to be a flight instructor for that university as well, for a 141 university.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know, so Brian's already pinged me. He's got some questions. And I have a few other questions. Brian, what's your question?
Well, I know we keep jumping back and forth, but I think this is perfect for the whole conversational type aspect of this. And thank you so much for all the information already. One comment first. Your route maps are absolutely incredible. I wish every airline would do that. It's just fun to look at them. What a cool way to do it. Like during my interview with the carrier that I work for, which Troy made it very clear that I work for JetBlue, they asked me, what's something interesting about the airline that you really enjoy? And in my interview, I said, I love your check-in kiosks because they say what's up on them and they say how you doing as you're walking past in the terminal. Your route maps are so cool. So hey, if you're listening and you want to work at Cape Air, write this down. That's something that you should say in your interview should you get one, because that differentiates Cape Air from the pack. So way to go on your route maps. I want to kind of surmise a lot of questions that are coming through in the chat box here. I mean, a ton of people asking a little specific about hour requirements and whatnot. You put up on the slides what the hour requirements are. If you could maybe be a little bit more specific in what is ideal, what is ranking at top of the pack now, so to speak. People are very concerned about, oh, it says 25 hours of multi-engine. I only have 22. I only have 15. Does it matter specifically? Is there a baseline that you have to hit, or is there a target right now is where you're kind of honing in on your recruiting efforts?
Yeah, no, the multi-time, that's, once you get into meeting PIC requirements, obviously that, to qualify as PIC, you have to meet that to be hired as a PIC or as a captain. But, getting hired as an FO, the multi-time is, you don't have to have 25 hours. Cape Air knows how to fly a multi-engine airplane, and they'll teach you how to fly that. You have that multi-certificate. That's really key. The vast majority of who we're hiring right now have that CFI experience. They just by far do the best in training. It's just a fact. And this is not to degrade by any means the experience you get as maybe a survey pilot or a skydive pilot or aerial survey. You're always flying VFR. You don't get that instrument experience or quite as structured an experience. And that's something, once you upgrade to captain, you do a lot of single pilot IFR flying into some challenging conditions. So that's something our training department focuses very heavily on. And you've got to have those fundamental instrument skills down. And, if someone doesn't make it through training, it's, they struggle with instrument skills. That's sort of a recommendation to you from our training department is, really get that structured instrument experience.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And hats off to you, Tress, and hats off to Ruby, and of course to you as well, Cameron. I mean, I've flown into Martha's Vineyard before. I've flown into Hyannis, and with a little bit of cloud cover, some IFR conditions, I sweat. And the pilots at Cape Air are going in and out of there multiple times a day as if it's lickety split, easy, in and out with no problem. So I've always looked at Cape Air pilots going in and out of Boston, and the times that I've been based in Boston, the times I've been based in O'Hare as well for a previous carrier, just going in and out with ease. The workload that your pilots handle is pretty incredible, and the experience that is offered from Cape Air is one that's not offered at any other carrier. And I know, at least at my company, since we do have so many pilots flow into JetBlue from Cape Air, that consistently captains that I have flown with on the Embraer 190 and now on the Airbus have said some of the best damn pilots that I've seen come through in the right seat are those that come from Cape Air. And so not only is your product great, and do you have a almost a cult-like group of followers who love to fly Cape Air and who see Ruby in the supermarket and say, "Hey, what's up, Cap?" You have an incredible group of pilots that pass through your doors, and that's evident through all of the word of mouth that's transferred now as they go on to other carriers after Cape Air. So what an incredible recruiting team as well that gets those pilots on property.
I've flown with some Cape Air pilots myself, and they're some of the most enjoyable pilots to fly with. And that's not just because they're great pilots, it's because I think, you develop some really good interpersonal skills working for a good airline that just make it enjoyable to work for. I was going to say that Cape Air is, for pilots, it's not a ladies of leisure type of airline. Like, there's a lot of hustle there. I fly into Boston, and it's Cape Air flight pushing back and taking off and coming in every few minutes, man. It's some busy work, but I'll say in my experience, flying 5 hours at a time is actually some of the most boring flying I've really ever done. And the times I've enjoyed flying the most is when I've been able to do lots of landings and lots of takeoffs. It's a hustle, but I've always had more enjoyment out of my job when I get to stay busy. I know Brian will disagree with that, Mr. Transcon over there, but I genuinely have had more enjoyment in my career when I've been able to do the real work of flying an airplane, which is getting into an airport and getting out of an airport there. So
I've been around the block a little longer than you, though, Troy. So
you have.
You're going to change your
about
mind
your age
after
later,
a couple more
Brian,
years.
So.
You can tell by my hairline, I'm losing a lot more.
And Ruby could speak to this. And Ruby could speak to this better. But one of the things that I hear from Cape Air pilots that have now moved on is miss flying, with a passenger sitting right next to you. Ruby, after you have that experience every day, especially flying in the Caribbean. But that's quite an experience. Right?
So I want to interject here. So a lot of the questions we got, and I hope you guys don't mind going a few minutes past the hour here. I am afraid if you're listening, we talked about doing live questions. We're not going to be able to get around to that. We've had just so many in the chat box, and it's been such a great conversation. I want to keep focused there. This is what I forgot to mention earlier. But I want to come back to this. A lot of questions on getting your preferred base and commuting and stuff like that. So I'd like to talk about that. And one of the questions specifically was for Ruby. You live in St. Thomas, but you're based in San Juan. Do you commute from St. Thomas to San Juan?
I'm actually based in St. Thomas. I started in my day here at home.
Okay.
There are, at the moment, I have 6 captains, one being myself, that are based in St. Thomas, and 4 of them commute on their days off. They do maintain an apartment here, or it's not a crash pad like you would see in the 121 world. They have their own apartment, but they're able to go home on their days off and then commute forth. Right. I live here full time year round, so I go home every night.
So commuting would be a little bit different at Cape Air then. It's not, when most people think about commuting, you think I'm going to show up for a 4-day trip and then I'm going to go from there to hotels and then get back and then go home on my last day. I may never really even see the ground in a city that I'm based in. That's not the way it works at Cape Air.
In the Northeast, Midwest, and the Caribbean region, that is correct. As Tristan said, in Billings, that is the only location where we have scheduled overnights.
Okay, got it. So another question was, and this is a great question, if I go to Cape Air today, how likely am I going to be to get my preferred base in the system? And what are the easiest bases to get?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just backing up to commuting, we do have CAS, we participate in CAS and non crew members, so you can jump seat and commute that way. Getting your base, as you all saw in sort of the route map pictures, just about with the exception of Billings, just about every city we serve is a pilot base. So it ranges from 2 captains in a base up to 10 to 15. So generally speaking, when you get hired, you don't bid until you're in training, and that's usually toward the end of initial training, which is about 6 weeks. So you have to come in. We do ask that you're willing and able to relocate to any base that Cape Air serves. So you do kind of have to come in being prepared to do that. Generally speaking, as a junior pilot, you can get into the region that you want to be in pretty early on. If not your first bid, then likely your second bid. That means, maybe it's not Boston, but maybe you can get into Saranac, New York, or Rutland, Vermont on your first bid. So you got to be willing to relocate to an extent, at least get a crash pad in the base that assigned, but you can get into the region that you want to be in pretty quickly.
That's good. That's great to hear. So, I mean, for those who may not be familiar, CAS is, well, don't ask me what it stands for. I just know what it is. It's the
Cockpit Access Security System.
There we go. It's a security. It's a database of all active pilots. It allows you to ride jump seats. So if you are a member of CAS, so if you're a JetBlue pilot, then you can ride. I'm sorry, JetBlue. If you're a Cape Air pilot, you can ride JetBlue. Or Spirit or Delta Airlines to get to work, or even travel for leisure, which is, I think, one of the greatest benefits of being a pilot is having access to that. Which brings up maybe another question I haven't seen anybody ask, but I'm curious, as an employee of Cape Air, what are your travel benefits like?
Ruby, when do you want to take that?
Well, we have the CAS privileges. Also, you can get the My ID travel for your family, spouse, children, etc. You can purchase the discounted standby fare for other carriers.
Awesome. So I'm going to pivot to a little bit different question here. We have a number of questions from folks who are not American citizens who are interested in flying for Cape Air. And Cameron, you were telling me this before we got started, that you guys do have a program that will sponsor visas. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have partnered with an organization out of Florida. They're a law firm and immigration firm that has been supporting individuals in different industries to get jobs in the U.S. and their green cards when they arrive. And so we partnered with them several years back. It takes a lot of time to get the green card, and it's an intensive process. Their recruitment team does a great job at recruiting pilots for the program and screening and interviewing. And then early on in that stage, they'll be passed on to Cape Air to complete an interview. And then it's 2 years from that point before you really have another contact with Cape Air. We do a final interview right after you get your green card to make sure, verify some things on our end and make sure you're, qualified to transition. You do have to have your ATP certificate to qualify for that program. But I point you in the direction to Overseas Manpower Solutions out of Pompano Beach, Florida. They're a great organization, and it has kind of been put on pause right now with COVID and everything. We're long-term committed to that program, and actually next week on Thursday, we're hosting a presentation to a couple hundred pilots that are interested in that program to show our commitment to it long-term. In 2019, we brought about 23 pilots through that pipeline. They went through training and are captains at Cape Air. I think Cape Air is one of the only airlines really sponsoring pilots for their green cards. It's been a great source, and it's actually really added to our DEI initiative with some great diversity to Air.
No, that is awesome. So speaking of groups of pilots you're hiring from, I had a couple of questions. The industry has furloughed quite a few pilots, in particular, 121 airline pilots. Are you guys interested in hiring 121 pilots? Kind of knowing, like you said earlier, Cape Air, you guys know that it's going to be kind of a stepping stone. How are you guys viewing folks who are in the furlough pool?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk to people every day in the situation, and really, we do need to see 6 months from the time you complete your check ride at Cape Air to spend that time and before you make a transition out and from Cape Air. But absolutely, would love to talk to you, and especially during the busy summer months, the peak season up here in the Northeast. Have some opportunities to bring on some to add some captains to the seniority list. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, we are about 10 minutes past when we said we were finished. We always know these things are going to go long. I'll let you guys finish with any closing statements, but I just want to say I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here. I think it's really exciting to have a partner. Brian was telling me, well, you were talking about this in the beginning, right? That Cape Air has been a sponsor of ours for
Sponsor for quite some time, yeah,
quite
for
some
the
time.
organization.
Yeah.
And actually, the very first company which partnered with NGPA for our Industry Expo back in 2014, which most attendees will know, we grew our Industry Expo out to Palm Springs and went from having 2 exhibiting companies, Cape Air being the first, growing to about 62 exhibiting companies, over 300 exhibitors, over 1,500 attendees. So Cape Air was instrumental in the ability for NGPA to even grasp the fact that we could host an industry event, and that there were companies interested in hiring from amongst our membership and encouraging the LGBTQ community within aviation for jobs in aviation. So that partnership and whatnot is something that I know most of our leaders will remember for a long time. Something that I remember as I took over our Industry Expo event. So definitely a nice moment to have you here with us today for our Up in the Air series.
Yeah. So we probably didn't get to everybody's questions. We did our best to try and address the topic of the questions that came through as best we could. Cameron, you mentioned contact email for you. Talk about your website and where they can find more information about pilot hiring and how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely. CapeAirPilots.com, CapeAirPilots.com. That's a website our marketing team has put together, dedicated to pilots and our pathway programs, partner universities, etc. All the information's there. The link to apply is there. Pilotjobs@capeair.com. Pilotjobs@capeair.com. That goes to our recruitment team. I will receive that email. If you've applied, I meant to say this earlier. We opened up our application the very end of November. I think the last couple of days. And in the first 2 months the application was open, we received over 800 applications.
Wow.
To fill in total, I think in 2021, we'll hire about 150 pilots or so. That's a ton of applications, and it just keeps going up every single day. So if you have put in an application, it's a pretty small recruitment team up here. So, we'll get to you on the list. Feel free to send us an email with your current resume, with your current times. It's a little difficult to update your hours within the application portal. If you've continued to fly and have more accurate times, update that resume, send it to pilotjobs@capeair.com, and someone will be in touch with you directly.
Awesome. Well, Ruby, thank you so much for joining us from St. Thomas. We're all sitting here. I'm in probably one of the only warmer places in the United States, so I'm not as jealous as maybe Brian is of you. But thank you so much for joining us from St. Thomas. Tristan, good luck in your upgrade training there at Cape Air. Really excited for you being a scholarship recipient as part of NGPA, watching you as you continue in your career path and being part of Cape Air. And Cameron, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Brian, did we have anything else we need to cover before we close out?
Well, I just wanted to say it. Happy belated birthday, Cameron. I know it was your birthday just the other day. So on behalf of everyone here at NGPA, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. We made a trip up to P-Town. My boyfriend and I, we drove up to P-Town on Saturday, and it was great. Tin Pan Alley. We had some lunch there at Tin Pan Piano Bar, and so it was great to see people up there and just have a little day trip. We really missed the events there this year.
Glad you had the chance to enjoy that. We miss P-Town very much, Troy and I. And for everyone who's still here, that email address for Cape Air is going to be coming up on your screen with a little bit of goodbye music in just a moment here, so you can write that down. Also, next week, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be sitting down with a company that is close to my heart. That's JetBlue Airways, another great partner with Cape Air. JetBlue will be on our Up in the Air webinar series next week. Joining us from JetBlue will be the System Chief Pilot, Chris Loom, as well as the Vice President for Revenue and Network Planning, Scott Lawrence. And also excitedly, the CEO of JetBlue Airways will be sitting down with us here for our Up in the Air webinar series, Robin Hayes. So be sure to register. You can go to ngpa.org/up in the air. Register for our JetBlue webinar next week, 4 p.m. That's Wednesday, February the 24th. That's all based on.
I'll add on top of that, if you're going to register for our next webinar, take a look at our membership page and consider becoming a member of NGPA while you're at it. That's one of the best ways you can support our organization, is continuing to give us your membership dollars. Join if you haven't before, renew if you've been a member in the past, and support us in that way. We really appreciate everybody joining us today, and we'd love to have you as part of our organization. Brian, that's it? Don't we have closeout music or something like that? A slide? I don't know.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Cameron. Thanks, Ruby. Thanks, Tristan. On behalf of the NGPA Board of Directors, our executive leadership team, We appreciate your continued partnership, and we'll see y'all next week at 4 p.m. February 24th for our next Up in the Air webinar series. You can check a recording of this. It'll be on our website, posted by tomorrow afternoon, and also available on our podcast formats on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora Podcasts. On behalf of everyone at NGPA, thanks so much, Troy, for hosting. Thank you, Cape Air. Have a great rest of your night. Take care and be safe.